Welcome to the Age of Quarantine. My name is David Castillo from Saint Vitus Bar. We're hitting a landmark here, people. This is our 200th episode. Thanks for joining us and just hanging out. It's kind of a bummer that this has gone on this long in a way because that means we're still in a pandemic, but it's also been really beautiful to share this time with you, connect still with artists, and just kind of talk about the world and art and all the things that we still really value deeply, even though we can't see each other. I have my celebrity guest host today, Grogu, who's joining us for the first time. We're bringing out the big guns here for the 200th episode. And man, I'm drinking some polar seltzer. We're gonna go a little bit of a different route. So cheers to you guys. Thanks for joining us. We have a great guest today. We have Ian Miller. He's played in a ton of great bands, most notably his new band Strangelight that put out a great record this past year, and also Kowloon Walled City, which is just one of the great noise rock bands of the past 10 years. Truly amazing stuff. Ian's a great player also in Lesar and Puig Destroyer. So without further ado, we're going to get to Ian right now. Thanks for joining us again. Thanks for making this thing fucking cool. It was a great, just amazing idea from Chris. And thanks to the whole crew, Ralph, Caroline, Chris, Artie, Drew, who does all our artwork. Thank you guys. All right, let's get it. Boop, boop. Mr. Miller right now.
Bro, good.
Hey,
what's cracking?
Not too much. How are you? Oh man, are you a black cherry?
Baby.
Yeah.
I was on your wavelength.
People with real taste know. They know the black cherry. Polar, that's the gift of the gods right there, my friend.
That's what's up. And it's not that easy to come by out west. They just started carrying it at the Safeway, though, so I'm hyped. It's a lot easier to get.
Nice. Are you in Oakland right now, Ian? Is that where you reside?
I am, yeah. From my palatial estate here in Oakland, California.
Live and direct. Awesome. So let's get into it. Here we kind of go through your musical history and, just take a trip and get to know a lot of different facets about your history from youth until today. So were you born and raised in Oakland, or where were you born?
I actually grew up in Southern Connecticut. So I grew up going to shows at the Anthrax, mostly at the Anthrax, a little bit of TVs, a little bit of Rio. But yeah, no, I'm a Southern Connecticut kid who came up in the hardcore scene among all those bands. I had an opportunity to see some of the best, most legendary heavy bands ever to come out of that area. As I was, we would just go to Anthrax and see whoever was playing that week, Raw Deal and Token Entry, or Side by Side, and today or what, fucking crazy.
Yeah, I feel like all of the straight edge hardcore bands from New York, especially, were playing the Anthrax every weekend. I think for all of our viewers, we should just point out that the Anthrax is an absolutely legendary club in Connecticut, on par, I think in New York, you could obviously point to your CBs, the Ritz, those kinds of places, Jersey City Gardens, Connecticut, Anthrax. That would pretty much be a hardcore weekend. So you being a Southern Connecticut person, you got to get those little weekend tours that, at that time touring really wasn't what it is now. Growing up in Connecticut and stuff, what were your earliest experiences with music? When you were a kid, what kind of drew you into music and wanting to just sort of, play, be part of a culture? What was the earliest kind of stuff that got you just kind of excited?
It was always guitar based. I'm like Hessian from birth. I think the first, well, I'll tell you the two, I did the Columbia House record and tape thing, and those were all I don't know, Foreigner, Beach Boys, Eagles, that. But the first records that when I went to the record store and bought two records, I feel like this still defines my musical taste today. It was Synchronicity by the Police and High Voltage. Those were my first purchases. And I feel like that's like duality of man, the duality of me. Like, there's this sort of like Caribbean, like jazz punk, and then just like dumb as dirt rock and roll on the AC/DC part. Still what I vibe on.
Yeah, that's great. So then it was just kind of those early things. I too was like a BMG Columbia House, stick the penny to the and send it in and get a bunch of stuff. That was definitely where I was at as well. When did you start actually trying to take up an instrument and playing bass and kind of like finding your way? And was that like, do you have a musical family? Was that like something that kind of came as a part of that, or was it more like, hey, I want to be a rock and roller?
My old man like had a folk guitar kicking around, and he would get drunk out and like sing early, but there was no like musical lineage in my family. I basically got assigned bass. Like the kids that I hung out with, we would all like listen to, what would we have been listening back? It would have been like AC/DC, Priest, Nazareth, stuff like that. One kid already had a drum. Somebody was already playing guitar, and they basically told me that I was playing. So I went down to the local secondhand musical instrument shop and bought the only bass that they had, which was a Univox Hi-Fi. And I'm but I realized there was like a dexterity component, like a handed component to a guitar. So I bought a right-handed guitar, not knowing any better. And I honestly don't think it's hampered me. I think it's helped me because there are probably 20 times as many right-handed instruments as there are lefties. So in a lot of ways, I learned the wrong way. Yeah, but that's how I got my start, and just self-taught mostly in my room, listening to Sabbath, and later on as trying to figure Maiden and Rush stuff just by ear, and that's still.
Yeah, that's I always find these sorts of things really interesting because, you talk to people who've played and made these great records that you like really like, and their journey towards like playing their instrument can be something as simple as like, hey, my buddy in middle school was like, yo man, you got to play bass because I play guitar. Like that simple. And like, here we are, whatever, 20 some odd years later, and you're this bass player that's well known for doing stuff in a lot of, especially in Kowloon, like a really bass heavy kind of like genres too, where you're playing is really front and center. And it's like, wow, that was a decision that was made, just like this, and when you're kids, nothing is ever that intellectual like that, right? You're just kind of like vibing whatever is happening, right?
Like you said, total fluke.
Yeah, total fluke. So when did you start kind of, obviously you just, mentioned that the Anthrax is a big deal and you were able to kind of go to shows there when you were younger, but when did you kind of make a switch to, just kind of like wanting to participate and play like in a band or be more of a part of a scene? Because, right, we're talking AC/DC, arena rock, big record stuff, I always like that process of how you drill into the underground. Like, how did we get to the Anthrax?
Yeah, well, I think it was my exposure to all that, to the punk and hardcore in Connecticut, subsequently in New Orleans when I went away to college. I had no idea that it's funny. Corrosion of Conformity was I ever saw when I gone away to school, moved to Oakland for university, and Corrosion sent me from like the Triangle, North Carolina, so they would come through like whatever. And eventually, you go to all those shows. So we went to the punk show that came through New Orleans. You just get to know those guys. They might not know your name. See you and you say what's through, and like that was when I realized they're those are just dudes, man. They're not the gods that I grew up worshiping, like the young brother Eric or any of those guys. They're just dudes, and you eventually learn that you can be those. So I guess I started becoming one of the dudes when I moved to Oakland, and this was the heyday of 924 Gilman, and playing in bands like almost immediately moving out here, and I haven't really slowed down since. Still doing it all these years later.
Sure, sure. And it's really interesting too because you bring up COC and obviously an incredible band, a band that spanned, went from hardcore to kind of creating their kind of bluesy kind of, kind of down-tuned metal that obviously hit the airwaves and stuff. But, for a lot of people that might not know, they played CBGBs as much as like any band. So they were up before they did that, so they kind of charted a different course. And it's kind of interesting being from the Northeast and probably seeing COC then to going, and by the time you're in New Orleans with them, they're kind of maybe in blind and doing different things, but they're still those people. And very cool band, amazing stuff there. So let's talk about why did you decide to go to school in New Orleans, and like what were you studying?
I was a real fuck up in high school, and I had the parents were going to pay for it either way. Like, I don't know, just apply to a bunch of and go wherever. I had some family connections in New Orleans. My grandparents had lived there. Both my grandparents had gone to Lane. Dad went there. So it was mostly like sort of a situation, city that I was sort of familiar with. If I had to do over again, I probably wouldn't made that. It was very conservative, very fraternity-based culture, and probably would have been better off, or different. But I ended up down there, and I found my people eventually at the radio station. I got a couple of really good spots. I founded the heavy metal radio show called Really Hostile. We did that for Saturday nights from midnight to 2 p.m. I met the guys from Exhorter and a lot of other Acid Bath and kids that were hanging out back then in that sludge scene.
So there were some good formative times at that place, even though it might not be where you wanted to be. You eventually did find those people. And for those who don't know, Slaughter of the Vaticans, like that Exhorter record is absolutely one of the greatest like records of the time period. So like absolutely phenomenal band, a really cool Acid Bath as well. Obviously Dax Riggs, and you got Sammy and stuff who plays in Godor now. So you were hanging with some really deep heads, and that's really fun. To me, that's so cool. That's dope. I'm a Northeast guy, and I've always stayed here too. So it's always interesting, hearing these tales of new towns and all of this. And sometimes those years that don't seem productive or seem a little bit lost or whatever, they can still really have that influence in you. You're around all of this music, and even though maybe it wasn't the most productive time or whatever as far as playing, you still met all these pretty influential people, right? Without your daughter, there's no Pantera.
100%. I literally was just having this conversation with a friend before I logged on with you. This person had never heard the Slaughter in the Vatican demo, which is what Vicky and Kyle would like bring around every Saturday night. They would come down, we would rage, play a song or two off the demo. So the demo was also Slaughter in the Vatican. They would go on to release the classic album Slaughter in the Vatican, which is mostly the same material. But yeah, if Pantera doesn't happen upon those guys, at a bar in Texas, then Pantera probably stays a glam metal band. I don't know. And we don't get, Cowboys or, so.
Yeah.
Wow.
Totally. Very, very, very interesting stuff that you were on that way. So, I guess that takes me, the next stop on the map, which you're still at, which is Oakland. Why there? Why did you, happen upon that city, and what made you kind of move out?
It was mostly like almost entirely the music scene. My partner and I were pretty much done Deep South. That culturally they're like, I don't know, 30 to 50 years behind the rest of the country. Even like New Orleans itself is wonderful, progressive, and like a little oasis in the middle. But as soon as you get out of city limits, it's a very different situation. So we wanted to get the fuck out of there. Figured that the Bay Area would be progressive, and obviously had a great music scene. Op Ivy had just broken up, but Rancid was about to form. I think when we got here, Downfall was happening. fan just post op, and just that entire scene. Green Day was starting up, like the whole deal popping off. Not, you know, I wanted to be the whole Lookout Record thing was like really important to me, equally important to the whole Discord Revolution thing to my development, sort of post New York hardcore about it like that. So yeah, the Bay stuff, and I check out something different. So we headed there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I love the Bay Area. It's probably, as a Northeast person, probably the West Coast place I think I connect the most to. I definitely really like it over there, and you're right. You know, that definitely was an exciting time, and with Gilman Street kind of popping off, and like all that, you felt like that was a center. I'm 37 years old. So for me, it was already like when I was kind of getting aware of stuff, it was like, oh, there's like CBs here and like some DC stuff. And like there's these certain centers of things. And you kind of knew that was what was up. And like, you know, I'm listening to like And Out Come the Wolves. And they're talking about that place, you know, like as like a little kid. So it's a very, obviously super iconic, but it's crazy how big that music became. But it really came from this small DIY roots scene out of the Bay Area, and it was making big moves in like the punk underground already. We had like this big thing with Lookout Records and everything like that. So when you got to the Bay Area, you said you just kind of started, you know, playing right away and doing stuff like that. Now, you know, I particularly know your work from kind of Kowloon on and stuff like that. What was that sort of period like? And obviously, when we talk about Lookout Records, that's not really Kowloon area kind of music, or even Strangelight too. Maybe more of a return to punk with Strangelight in a certain way, but not quite like that. So tell me about that time period, because it is, you know, super interesting with a lot of personalities and people hanging around for sure.
So I was in a band within like a week of moving. It was pen pal friends back before the internet kid. We used to write letters to one another, like trade zines and shit. My friend Devin Moore, now in Conquest for Death, a band that still goes out in parts unknown, basically. Like Devin's insane, and we'll go tour like steps of, you know, I don't know, Eastern Russia or whatever. For Death's whole deal is they go places that no hardcore bands. Back then, Devin was trying to put a thing together. Got a band together called All You Can Eat. Played with them for a while. What did I do now? Oh, yeah, the whole like ska punk thing was still like pop ID, and because it was zeitgeist going off, I played in a band called Hoodlum Empire that was like ska punk. I played because of my playing with those dudes, the Skank and Picklefoot, ended up playing with them for a couple of years. Got tired of that whole scene and wanted to go back to my hardcore roots. So through Lars Fredrickson of Rand, he helped put together, I don't want to call it a superstar, like whatever, like there's a bunch of dudes who've been around. So Tim Chunks from Token Entry was out in LA by doing his thing. Eric Ozine, who was saying for Unit Pride, had gotten out of the circuit, was ready to get back in the band, and I had been around doing stuff. Lars brought us all together and to Redemption 87. He produced demos.
Oh yeah, I know. I heard of that before too. That was another Oi band that he was doing at the time, right?
We had like Oi elements, but it was kind of like New York hardcore, like played like by old dudes. So Tim wasn't singing. Tim was playing guitar, which he had never done before and was super into. And yeah, so like it was like, you know, fast hardcore breakdowns, like the kind of stuff that. So we did 2 records, and then that thing kind of fell apart, and I drifted aimlessly for a while. Kowloon was probably the next thing of note that I ended. I did like indie rock stuff in between, and yeah, Kowloon. I think we just had like maybe our 13th birthday at the.
Yeah, definitely been for a while, and some incredible records. I mean,
oh, thank you.
Let's talk about it's pretty interesting to me from like just hearing about all this, first of all, again, who would have known that you were like jamming with Lars Fredriksson and stuff, and Redemption 87 and stuff. And I remember also, I think around that time, that's when Rancid kind of put out that super fast record that they did with it, just had like the skull and crossbones on it. And it felt like very hardcore influence too. And I remember they wanted to do something tough. It felt like a little bit different. And I've always kept around those guys. In fact, I saw Rancid with the Misfits at MSG and like lost my mind. I'm a big fan. But and that entire scene has always been very interesting to me. And so you were in that and obviously got to play and doing that stuff. But musically, as a bass player, right? Now this journey, right? We've been on like this, like, okay, so I played in a lot of punk bands, and then I wanted to get into hardcore and stuff like that. And now Kowloon's like a bit of a jump. How did you feel about just being like a player and playing a bunch of this stuff? And were you kind of feeling like, my skills are starting to get to a certain point, maybe I want to take it in a completely different direction? Can you just talk about the evolution of your playing? And like, obviously we started with Sabbath and Rush, but now we've been do like fast, like hardcore-ish bass stuff for a long time. We're pretty far apart here.
Yeah, it was interesting. So Scott Evans, the main force behind Kowloon Wild City, he's another Long Island guy. So like he moved out here to do like tech stuff with his family. We bonded immediately because we have the same like shitty attitude and sarcastic sense of humor. Like, you guys know.
Spiritual Northeast. You still got it in you, baby.
Of course. I talk fast and I have a bad attitude. So, Scott and I got along like right out of the gate. But he was also playing bass. So I was like, well, clearly we're not going to have a band together. We're going to do like, I don't know, who was the Ned's Atomic Dust Band? We weren't going to do an Atomic Dust Band cover band. So we talked about doing some stuff, but then it didn't quite come together. So kept hanging out and going to shows and stuff. And then Scott switched guitar and he's like, do you want to come down and try out and see if this Kowloon works? And to be quite honest, I didn't get it at first. Like, I didn't come from noise rock background. Like, I listened to Godflesh and loved them. But all the other times, I was never like a big Melvin guy. Shallow North Dakota got really worshipped that I hadn't listened to prior to getting. But he had all these other, Jeff the drummer had all these other like musical touchstones that I wasn't familiar with. So honestly, I didn't get it at first. I just kind of, I was like, the hangs were good, and playing with, really rewarding to play with Scott and play the material that he'd written. But I honestly like just went and the strength of Scott's vision and just sort of like everything else just sort of came later. And so I'm into playing less. Playing less is not an issue. I love dub. I love reggae, like as a bass, like that really, really speaks to me. Mostly that's about figuring out where to leave space. So like that sort of headspace I could get into immediately. I got that was really important to this music. So
I think that's really interesting that you point that out, because obviously, so it kind of goes to ska punk thing. Obviously, it's waves afterwards, but we go back to the Don Letts, early London era, and there's always been that connection to Bad Brains and hardcore, of course, right? And we kind of chart that, but obviously, hardcore bass players don't have that per se. But then, if you talk to people like, say, like a Walter Schreifels, going back to our youth of today, our Northeast roots here. When he was putting together stuff like, Quicksand and stuff, the space, he loves reggae. I know I'm not as big or as versed in that, but it's interesting that maybe that feeling in that space was learned from a completely different space, like musical space. So you could get what they're kind of going for, but like not because you listen to the Melvins, because you're listening to like, I don't know, some like Peter Tosh records or something, right? Is that kind of what I'm like that drives sort of the right way?
More or less, yeah. Like I was looking for ways to play less, and so that had to have been a factor in how the whole thing came together and clicked. I was very into the idea of playing distortion and playing super loud, so that was not an issue.
Yeah, that's sick. Keep that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like the first thing that we did, we ended up recording the Turk Street EP, which are initially minutes. That was just supposed to be our demo. Recorded it in our practice space in San Francisco. Actually, it came out so good that we're like, we should just release it. So that was the first release, and then gambling, and then had a lineup shift, and player moved away. But yeah.
And so this is all really like kind of based on you and Scott meeting him, inviting you to the fold, and he's really kind of the main songwriter in that situation. And for people who don't know, Scott's also a producer. He like makes records and stuff, and he's like very good at it. So when you first met, as you said, he brought you in, you kind of like had to sort of adapt to his songwriting and sort of the style and those sorts of things. Has Scott recorded everything that you guys have ever done? Is it always sort of that process where he's kind of like just on like that kind of level? So he's been recording kind of the whole time. So he's just got it, and then you kind of come in. How is it kind of like working with such a, you know, strong songwriter? Like, is it, hey, here are the bass lines, or are you kind of like, let's all get into the room? How is the musical process as far as writing songs with Scott?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It has varied, not only over the course of the band, but also, you know, some songs like John will come in with a riff and we'll jam on it a while and we'll song. Other times Scott has come in with demos where everything's been gridded out, the drum part, the bass part. And I might take little liberties with it, but like Scott has a very clear vision for what he's looking for, like always. And I don't mind, you know, cohering to that. I'm there.
Sure.
I'm there to support songs, and so it has varied. But again, yeah, Scott is the idea, Scott the vision, and we're all sort of that. That said, we do like flash times. Like I'm always trying to bring melody, and Scott's always been resistant to that. And I think in the latest record that we've recorded, that's not hopefully be out. I'm in calendar 2021.
Hey, new Kowloon, that's cool.
I'm hopeful.
Is this a world exclusive? New Kowloon is coming this year?
Yes.
Hey, Gilead Media, I'm talking to you. That's fucking sick. That's cool.
From your mouth to God's ears, David.
Yeah.
There's probably like you know, if there were like 3 or 4 little melodic flourishes I managed to get in on the last record, maybe there's 5 or 6 on the new record. So like, I'm like the pop guy. I fucking love Carly Rae Jepsen and, you know, Charlie XCX and Sia. I'm always trying to like shoehorn that.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of a great thing, though. I think that sometimes no matter what kind of music is being made, sometimes the people that make the music that you love in any particular genre, they're not like particularly analogously like listening to that the whole time or anything like that. You know, like, I mean, I make techno and shit and like whatever, you know, and I also, you know, yeah, I love pop music. I like melody a lot, and I enjoy the juxtaposition of those things. And that's what I find cool. It's like sometimes the person that's perfect for the band isn't even listening to the same things that you are, but they can give kind of a style and an effort and an insight that can be a little bit different that brings that out. And I think I've seen that too, from especially Container Ship, you know, to Grievances, and like how that sort of, you know, kind of moved a little bit. I feel like I listened to both those records in the past week in anticipation of this, and I was just kind of like, yeah, the progression here is really like kind of interesting. It like kind of opens up a little bit more, I think, on Grievances. There's a little more expansiveness, but there's a little bit more melody, and you can feel a little bit more shift in the songwriting, which is cool. You know, we don't want the same thing over and over again. But I'll have to talk about Container Ships, because we actually did a show with you guys at Vitus that was fucking great, man. I still remember that one. Packed show, really good. You guys played pretty early, but then there was tons of people there, and I just remember the band really delivering and meeting Scott and you guys, and like it being wonderful. I feel like that record really kind of took the band up a notch, like where people started to really know it a bit more. And I was, at the time, I feel like noise rock stuff I love that music. I'm a huge fan, but that was like pre like bands like Horrors and bands like this, where I feel like other bands are starting to kind of rise up. I feel like you guys, Horrors, a couple others started to come up that were sort of playing in that same sandbox. But before that, it'd been a little bit before new bands in that sort of zone started kind of rising up. How did you feel about just writing that record and kind of what happened and how it was received?
Yeah, that was definitely like the breakthrough. And I think the biggest factor was the lineup shift. So John Howell, who had played in a band called Titan, replaced our original guitar player, Jim, who moved to Seattle. And John's a freak. There's no other way to say it. Like an insane guitar player, never anybody else like. Amazing. He can do anything. Like, he's one of those guys that will just, go around his ass to get to his elbow, like writing stuff. Like he makes everything unnecessarily difficult and complex, but that's just who he is. He can't help it, and it ends up like creating this amazing product. And so yeah, adding him contributed a lot to the songwriting, the sonics of the record. Like that was the deal. But also leveled up his recording, like figured it out. I want to say Container Ships was the first record that we didn't record in our practice. So like we went into Shark Bite, like recorded it in the legit drum room and got real drum sounds and stuff. And that was huge. Got so like leveled up in terms of recording and production. So I think those are the two big. Songwriting was just, a lot stronger on that record.
And I think that that's really interesting for people to hear, especially when a band's doing a lot of stuff, within the band, right? You're recording your stuff, you're writing the songs. Some bands depending to a lot of their own artwork. I don't know if that's true for Kowloon. Who's been doing artwork, or is that kind of
all in? Scott and his partner do all that stuff. She's a graphic designer as well, so
there you go. So yeah, certain bands like Converge, right, is another band that it's all in house. You got Jake, doing artwork. You got Kurt recording the band. Like you have that. So I feel like as an organization, not just like as a band, all these things can kind of get a bit better. Like you can learn on multiple levels, and then just have this sort of like moment where all of them sort of jump up. And that's a kind of an interesting thing. Like you said, you're like, we got a new member and some more songwriting, and Scott got better recording, more, more progression on the art level. And I remember just receiving it and people being like, yo, man, I think that you'd really dig this shit. Like, just, being a fan of like, noise rock and like New York style, like kind of post-hardcore. It's like this really has like the thump to it, like a Helmet Quicksand or like a Touch and Go, kind of like release like, Chicago shit, like, yo, check this out. And I fell in love with it like right away. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. And like I said, the shows at Vitus are cool. I know it's hard, to kind of get out and tour for you guys and stuff. And, it kind of comes a little bit more piecemeal. Could you talk a little bit about just playing live and, just kind of that evolution a little bit? And also like with touring, obviously it seems like everyone in the band has different things going on and stuff like that, and you kind of do it when you can. Can you talk about those decisions and just, why, how, and what?
Yeah, absolutely. The touring thing is weird. Like we're all adults with families and full-time jobs, so the gigging is sort of catching. And we almost never play locally unless like one of our friends' bands through and wants us to play there. There's a cool house show happening. But I feel like even if we didn't have those abilities, I feel like the days of everybody piling into a few months and going across country, very few bands are do that anymore with gas $3 or $4 a gallon. You could do that in the 90s. Living in the Bay Area are insane. Gas is incredibly expensive. The opportunities to do that, the days in which people do that, unless you're really going to do it dirtbag style, which I'm all for. I feel like days are gone. So we try to pick our spots. You know, we love like nothing more than you fly into Oakland from SFO, run van, and like do a run of shit. You know, down to I don't know, Atlanta or South Carolina or something like that.
Totally. And eventually we got to get you guys back over to the East Coast, because every time I see Kowloon doing something on the West Coast, I'm like, because I would love for you guys to come back, and I really, you know, obviously enjoy the music and stuff. But this is totally understood. You know, a lot of different people. My band, Primitive Weapons, same thing. Me and Artie run the bar. Eric owns 2 successful bars here in Brooklyn. Chris works for Revolver. We do the show together with Artie and stuff. And, you know, it's like we do the most that we can when the opportunities are right. But it's always that, you know, bands, you know, we talked about playing, we talked about recording, artwork. There are also projects where you need to organize, you know, 4 or 5 different people's lives around trying to make music. That's not the easiest thing. And the approach, that's always interesting. It seems like the bands that have a lot of longevity, 13 years in the game or whatever, making really cool records, they can manage that process and just make art that really fulfills them, but also not try and burn the band out too much by making it too much of a intense situation, financially, personally, whatever have you, right? Do you feel like you guys have struck the balance pretty well over the past years?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we all, everybody in the current lineup, sure to understand, you know, what's on offer, the hierarchy or the priorities of where the band belongs. In our last, it was, I guess, 2 summers ago now, we got to do almost Europe with Neurosis, which was fucking amazing.
I saw that, man, and I was like, woo! Oh, I mean, all right.
Yeah. That's like bucket list type shit, man. Just getting to see Neurosis every night for 3 weeks. Getting to see Yob every night for 3 weeks, hanging out with those guys, learning at their feet, you know, like, absolute, you know, God tier shit. So like, we'll do that, or like we would love nothing more than to come back to New York. And I don't know if you noticed this. I am repping.
Oh my God! Look at that!
Look
at that! Beautiful. We appreciate that. That's amazing. Thank you.
I love you guys. Vitus is like, okay, somebody asked in the chat earlier, favorite place to play. Vitus is hands down, like in the United States, easily my favorite place to play.
Oh man, thanks.
Easily my favorite place to go see a show too, just as a patron. You guys put the attendee experience first. Like, you always take such care of the artists. Like, there's nowhere. My wife and I had our wedding anniversary party. We had like a big round for wedding anniversary, and we just like called up the bar, like, hey, can we come down and bring a cake and like throw a little party? You guys, come down, come through.
Yeah, man.
The fucking best. I love you guys.
Thank you so much. I mean, you know, we just, you know, we're like a good computer, but we need the right software. So without cool bands, it's like kind of bullshit. So we need each other, you know, and that's the way it kind of needs to be. And so, yeah, we're lucky, you know, that we're creating something together in my mind, you know. We need all of these things, and they can, you know, they kind of like reinforce one another, and then you do really wild stuff, you know, where the fact that bands like Yob and Neurosis even walk through our door along with yourself, and then we're like, we're in business, baby. Like, we're good. When that kind of stuff happens, we're blessed, and then we can give that to the people, you know, because they want it too. So I love that. That's a beautiful thing, and, you know, obviously appreciated, but also, you know, it lets us know that we're doing the right thing, you know, and continuing on the mission. Speaking of continuing on the mission, we have to bring up Strangelight, which is the new band that you're in. I was made aware of it last year by Curran Reynolds, who's your publicist, but is also a great friend of mine. And if Curran's doing shit, I pay attention. Curran's amazing. He also is like, he's not just like some dude. He like played drums in fucking Today's the Day. He's in a great band called Body Stuff. Wonderful, wonderful ear, and cool stuff. He's like, yo, check this shit out. He's like, one of the homeboy from Kowloon's in it. It's cool, but it's not, don't expect that, but like, it's cool. So I was like, cool. And here I am listening to these like 2-minute songs like flying by and hit me in the face. Really cool record. Really enjoyed it. Adult Themes is the name of the record. It's available on Bandcamp and wherever you want to listen to that. But yeah, it was cool. I was like really excited to kind of check it out and just be like, oh, okay, cool. This is a new vibe. But I definitely enjoyed it, and it brought a great energy where I'm like, whoa, this band could play more along the lines of like a band like like a Red Fang, or like punk bands and hardcore bands like a Mets, or like different areas of kind of the scene than something like Kowloon did. And it might be, now hearing your story, a little bit of a return to form for your kind of playing. Talk to me about putting together Strangelight and how that project happened.
Yeah, it's funny. So it's another band with like a really strong frontman guy with a vision. So it's Nat Coughlin. He played in Trap Them, but he was the main guy in Transistor. So he was a songwriter in Transistor. I didn't know about them at the time, but like put me on to them on down the road. Anyway, back in the Transistor days, Julia, who played in Kowloon for like a year, she did a stint in Transistor, and then Nat ended up moving Mass Bay for a job. And they wanted to like put something together. And so I knew Julia from Kowloon, I knew Nat through Kurt. And so I guess that's kind of how I got the gig. Nat sent me over some songs like, this stuff is great. It's like right up my alley. I just kind of wanted to play like Tony Alvarez, like Descendants lines to everything that Nat writes. And he liked that. So we were good to go. Tony Teixeira, who plays in a ton of bands. He's in Swingin' Utters. He was in, I'm drawing a blank. I think this is gonna happen. No, when. Tony is in like a ton of great bands, but yeah, plays Utters and stuff. He plays second guitar, or like lead guitar, really. And yeah, so like the creative brief for that band, like more like Wipers, all that San Diego stuff, like Pitchfork and Jehu, and like
I definitely heard a bunch of Froberg kind of vibes and things of that nature. It's a great rock, hardcore, blurring the lines, the men. I loved it. I was just like, I love listening to that kind of stuff, and I was pleasantly surprised, because also I remember now thinking back to the conversation too. Like I love Trap Them. And I remember I was like, oh yeah, this dude. I remember when he was in the band, but like I did a million shows with them and stuff. And again, I was just like, okay, what's this gonna be? And those songs really hit. And for you, a bit of a return to form. How did it feel playing fast again and stuff? Did you just feel like, yes, I needed a little bit of that after many years of leaving all this space and thumping along to Scott's songwriting?
Minimalism, yeah. No, like a lot of times Nat has to like coax it out of me, like, cause I'm so trained to like do less. He's like, no. That thing that you did where you like did that run up the neck, like take the dog for a walk, do whatever. He's definitely got to like give me the heads up about when he wants to. Like, yeah, I think now my fault is to just, not do that. But no, it's been super fun. It's been, it's like opening up a relief valve.
Yeah, definitely.
It's fun.
That's great. Super cool. So how long has that project been around? Is that the first record that you guys have put out?
That is the first record. So I think it's 10 songs. I think it's, it's on the cusp of being an LP. It's like a short LP.
LP. We'll give it LP status. If it's 10 songs, I don't care about the runtime. That's an LP.
Yeah, short LP. We've already, like, Nat's got like 50 something songs in the hopper too, though. So like, as soon as the quarantine shit lets up, we'll be ready to rip another one and do some 7 inches in between and play some shows.
Yeah, definitely. So what was it like kind of, I've been here too, I just released some music in the past month or so, and that I've had for a while, not really sure what to do with it. How has it been sort of releasing during this time and just trying to figure it out? Because obviously Kowloon's been kind of chilling, even though there will be a new record this year.
Yes.
I'm talking and speaking it into existence.
Speak to existence, yes.
For me, I don't care about anybody else. Just for me, pure selfishness. But how's that? How is it? I mean, it's bizarre. It's bizarre to know what to kind of do, right? How's that sort of made you feel? Have you been more productive? Have you been just kind of chilling? Talk to me about just trying to make. I mean, it's almost been a fucking year.
Yeah, dude, I've been going nuts. I just delivered my 5th record. I just sent my 5th quarantine record to the label this past weekend. So my solo stuff, I've been releasing it under the Interesting Times Gang, which is an Ian Banks sci-fi reference. I won't go into it now. It's a dumb, long name. Nobody knows. But it's IT Gang on Bandcamp. Yeah, I done 2 records that have been sort of like, I don't know, indie pop, electronic pop stuff, 2 ambient records, and then the 5th record that I just sent in, which was spring, is instrumental. It's like beat, not like calling them hip hop beats isn't exactly accurate, but it's the closest thing I can do. Like there's like beats, like Dilla beats or something like that.
Got it.
And then I'm working on other stuff constantly. Like I'll do playthroughs on my YouTube channel or like interview basis, a scenario not unlike this. My wife and I are both fortunate enough to be able to work from home. So we got a steady income coming. And so I've just been like going nuts making music.
That's cool. Yeah, it's really interesting to sort of see how different people are channeling things and trying to, figure it out. If it's writing, some people are just like, I can't pick up an instrument right now. It's just like not for me. That's totally cool. Yep. It's just trying to figure out different ways. To me, this kind of keeps me feeling like, I'm almost like at Vitus, like this might be the type of conversation I would have in the basement, chilling out, yes. Being like, how you been, man? What's going on? Maybe I wouldn't have talked about your childhood, but fuck, I would be asking you what's going on, how you been, what's going on, in Oakland, what's happening, what music you're making, whatever have you, and obviously we'd love Strangelight to come and play someday and do all that stuff, but it's good to hear that you're, keeping productive, doing all of that stuff, and just, continuing to play, because I feel like just there's a lot of people still finding their ways to be sort of creative and do stuff in these different moments. Speaking of some other kind of projects, there's one that I wanted to throw out there. You were in Puig Destroyer.
Yep.
I love that thing. I thought that was so fucking funny. And Yasiel Puig, I love him. I think he's hysterical and cool. And I love sports. I'm a big Mets fan. So don't worry about any allegiances here. I think you might be a Dodgers fan from everything that I see. No?
No.
What are you, a Giants fan? What's the deal?
Yeah, I'm sort of like a lapsed Giants fan. It's funny. I worked adjacent to the baseball industry for a little while, and that's sort of like once I start to get to know like guys and their stories, I became a fan of teams, and just more a fan. You just root for people, kind of like yes, yeah.
Narratives are good, and I like that. I mean, I've only lived here, so I feel like if I was somebody who'd moved to 3 or 4 different cities, it would definitely muddy up my allegiances, if you would say. But I'm a big fan of mixed martial arts and things like that, and that's a very individual sport, and a sport where there's just every fighter has a narrative and a journey, and it's very interesting to kind of like, to me, learn about these very like extraordinary humans. But I definitely haven't made like an insane metal record about any of them. So tell me how that kind of came together, and it was really the zeitgeist of the moment, because Puig was really going off at that time. He was kind of the darling of the league.
Such a dumb story. So Riley Breckenridge, who plays drums in Thrice, and Puig Destroyer, he and I used to do a baseball podcast together, and we, Yasiel Puig said was in the zeitgeist. Like he had captured everybody's imagination. And like Riley we were doing an episode, made some offhanded content about Puig Destroyer, like some a thing. And I laughed and, you know, didn't think about again for a little while. I think I called him later that night, like, dude, we need to do this. We need to strike. He's like, all right, I guess. So I think like within an hour, I had written like 6 or 8 songs, just like track demos with just bass and like click tracks. And so we got Mike Minnick, who had sang for Curl Up and Die, who wasn't doing anything at the moment. We're like, Mike's a big baseball guy. We'll get him this thing. And we got John Kowloon to play guitar because he can play basically.
That's the thing is like you didn't get a bunch of bums to fucking do this. I mean, like there's like real musicians, good musicians. I'm like, dude, this is kind of insane. Well, you know, you could drop the Pleadus or thing and maybe work on another record sometime. Yeah. Like, I don't know. Like, this is pretty fucking, you know, serious business.
Yeah.
So you get all those guys together and you just.
So I think from like coming up with the concept to putting it up on Bandcamp was like less than a week. Because that's what you can do with Bandcamp these days. It's fucking great. So like within 7 days, we had the first EP up there. We eventually ended up pressing that. Made another record called Wait for Spring, like I guess another EP, and eventually put out a full length, and we kind of like ran out of steam. Yeah, they all sort of fell out of favor, I guess. He was no longer the goal. But we also just kind of ran out of ideas, like how many punk rock songs about baseball can you make?
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, exactly. It's like you kind of always need that fodder to like make it happen, right? Yeah. So not the easiest thing to do. Luckily they're still playing now. Maybe, you know, we could have like a maybe Francisco Lindor song for us Mets fans at a certain point. If, you know, it strikes your fancy, we'll take it.
I'm so about that trade, man. I'm so fired up about the new ownership. The Wilpons are gone. You guys are sitting pretty. You guys are doing all right.
Yeah, man. Sandy's back with his new gang, and you know, it's like I'm ready. I'm ready for fandom. You know, I'm very excited about that for sure. As you know, somebody who's watched the Mets act like they were like a AAA team from Schenectady or something. You know, so it's been kind of difficult. But meanwhile, creating a good amount of homegrown talent. So that was kind of like, it's like, yo, man, if we could just maybe, you know, start hitting when Jake DeGrom is pitching like this, we could be maybe pretty fucking good, or, you know, whatever have you. So, yeah, it's definitely a much better situation, and I'm excited about that stuff. And it's fun that you actually did something that just kind of married other passions. I like when people just do fun fucking shit who are just also just super talented, and it's kind of a window into the personality of these other folks too, like other interests, other things like that. And I'm like, damn, look at all these fools who like love baseball and started this weird fucking hardcore band about it. I'm here for it. I think that was great. You know, it doesn't always have to be so serious, everybody.
Right on.
I'm here for serious art, but we can also be here for all the rest of it. So, Ian, my man, I got a couple minutes left. Is there anything that you want to tell the people, anything that you want to plug, anything that's sort of coming up that's sort of relative or important that you want to do, a little like shout out kind of vibe?
I guess a couple of things. So one thing that we haven't talked about is Collapse Culture, which is a project that I'm doing with Graham Scala from Bleach Everything. And it's like electronic dub stuff. And
cool.
Graham is mostly driving it, but he asked me to play bass, do some programming and stuff. So that's coming out on the 29th, which is not this Friday, but the following in PAX Eternal. It'll be up on and on streaming platforms. Once again, that is Collapse Culture.
Collapse Culture.
Yeah.
Good to know. I'll make a note.
That's cool. Thanks. Yes, I'm super hyped about how that's going. This is something like, I guess the closest thing that I can sort of draw a parallel to is like Axiom ambient stuff. Like, yeah, super bass heavy, like dub. I've been wanting to do this forever, and super hyped to collab with them. It's been great. I just also want, like, a shout out to Vitus. You guys are the best. Support the staff and the crew over there. I know y'all were selling these killer tanks. I'll show it again.
Thank you, Ian. Yeah, we got a lot more merch stuff coming. You know, the store is popping, and we're starting to sell vinyl and do all this other cool stuff. So we're out here surviving, man, and we're just looking forward to seeing everybody after this thing is done. And you know, we're hanging in there strong. So we're very lucky that we have the support that we do. And you know, we're just looking back. You know, we're a lonely computer with no software. So we hope that. To see you soon, and with you know, whatever musical project that may be. So thanks for joining us, Ian. You're the shit. Thank you very much. I'll see you soon, guys. Thanks for joining us for all these episodes. It'll be up on IG soon. Talk to you later, and be well. Right? Peace.
Late.